I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing out the last of the breakfast dishes, when the letter arrived. Olivia had already bolted out the door to catch the school bus, leaving her half-eaten bagel on the counter. Typical for a 14-year-old. I didn't mind, she was scatterbrained but kind-hearted, her hugs fierce and her laughter contagious. She was mine. Or so I thought. The mail carrier waved through the window as I dried my hands on the dish towel and grabbed the bundle from the mailbox. Sandwiched between a coupon flyer and a utility bill was a cream-colored envelope with a thick, embossed seal. No stamp. No return address. Just my name, Rebecca Collins. I set it on the counter and stared at it for a moment, a cold feeling forming in the pit of my stomach. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat and deliberate. Something about it felt important. My instincts told me I wouldn't like what was inside. Finally, I opened it, sliding out a folded sheet of heavy paper. Dear Ms. Collins. My name is Sophia Rowland. I believe you are the adoptive mother of my daughter, Olivia. I have recently come into information regarding her location and have been eager to connect. I understand this may come as a surprise, but my husband and I would like to meet her and discuss her future. Please let us know a time and place that would be convenient. With gratitude. Sophia Rowland. My hands were shaking before I even finished reading. I had known this moment might come someday, but nothing could prepare me for the reality of it. The Rowlands. Olivia's biological parents. I'd adopted Olivia when she was just a toddler. She had been placed in the system after her birth parents, young and overwhelmed, gave her up. The caseworker had told me they were trying to get their lives together, but nothing ever came of it. Olivia had become my everything. And now, they were back. That evening, Olivia came home from school with her usual flurry of energy, tossing her backpack onto the couch and heading straight for the fridge. Hey, kiddo, I called from the living room, trying to sound normal. Hey, Mom. What's for dinner? She asked, rummaging through the shelves. Chicken. But first, we need to talk. She popped her head around the corner, a string cheese dangling from one hand. What's up? I patted the couch beside me. She came over, flopping down and unwrapping the cheese with a dramatic sigh. I got a letter today, I began, careful to keep my tone even. From your biological parents. Her eyes went wide. What? They want to meet you. She froze, the cheese halfway to her mouth. They found me. I nodded. They reached out to me first. They didn't want to blindside you. I told you this might happen someday. Yeah, but I didn't think it actually would, she muttered, staring at the coffee table. Her reaction was impossible to read, surprise, fear, curiosity. I gave her a moment before continuing. They've asked to meet. You don't have to decide anything right now, but I wanted you to know. Do you think I should go? She asked softly. My breath caught. What did I think? On one hand, I didn't want to deny her the chance to learn about her origins. On the other, I was terrified of losing her. But this wasn't about me. I think, I said carefully, that it's your decision. But if you want to meet them, I'll be with you every step of the way. She nodded slowly, then stood up, clutching the cheese in her hand. I need to think about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. Would Olivia resent me for keeping her from her biological parents all these years? What if she decided their world was better than ours? I thought back to the early days, when I first brought her home. She'd been so small, with a mop of dark curls and big brown eyes that seemed to take in everything. She'd clung to me, terrified, when I tried to leave her at daycare for the first time. You're my mommy, she'd said, tears streaming down her face. You'll come back, right? Always, I'd promised her. Always. Now I wasn't so sure. 2 days later, Olivia came to me with her answer. I want to meet them, she said, her voice steady but her eyes nervous. I think I need to know who they are. I nodded, forcing a smile. Okay. Let's set it up. And just like that, the wheels were in motion. I contacted the Rowlands, who responded immediately with a suggestion, a dinner meeting at their home in Brookhaven. Of course, they lived in Brookhaven. I tried not to roll my eyes at the thought of Olivia being swept into their world of gated communities and private schools. On the day of the meeting, Olivia spent an hour getting ready, fretting over her outfit and brushing her hair until it gleamed. "Do I look okay?" she asked, turning to me for reassurance. "You look beautiful," I said, my throat tight. She looked more grown-up than I'd ever seen her. The Rowlands' house was exactly what I expected, a sprawling estate with manicured lawns and a driveway long enough to park a fleet of cars. Olivia gripped my hand as we approached the door, her excitement and nerves radiating off her in waves. The door swung open, and there they were. Sophia was stunning, with the kind of effortless elegance that comes from old money. James was tall and imposing, his handshake firm and his smile calculated. "Olivia," Sophia said, her voice warm. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." Olivia flushed, glancing back at me for reassurance. I gave her a small nod, even as my stomach churned. And so began the first chapter of a story I never wanted to write. The first thing I noticed as we stepped into the Rowlands' house was the smell, like polished wood and roses. Everything about the space screamed wealth, marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers, expensive art hanging on walls that stretched high enough to echo. Olivia clung to me, her eyes wide, as if we'd walked onto a movie set. Sophia gestured for us to follow, her tone warm but practiced. "Dinner is ready in the dining room. We thought it would be best to talk over a meal." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded, though I felt like I was being led to a lion's den. Olivia glanced back at me, and I mustered a reassuring smile. Sophia opened the double doors to a dining room larger than my entire apartment. A long, glossy table stretched the length of the room, set with fine china and more silverware than anyone needed. James stood at the far end, pouring wine into a pair of glasses. "Rebecca, Olivia," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "Please, sit. I hope you like salmon." "It's her favorite," I blurted out before I could stop myself. Then I realized what I'd done and shut my mouth. Sophia's smile didn't waver. "Wonderful. Then we've chosen well." Dinner was awkward at first, mostly polite small talk. The Rowlands asked Olivia about school, her favorite subjects, and her hobbies. She answered carefully, glancing at me for approval after every question. "So, Olivia," Sophia said finally, leaning forward, "do you like art? We noticed your portfolio when we spoke with the agency. You have quite the talent." My stomach turned. Her portfolio. The adoption agency must have given them access to everything. Olivia's face lit up, her nerves melting away for a moment. "I love art. I want to be a graphic designer or maybe an illustrator." Sophia and James exchanged a look. "Well," James said, "we could arrange for you to meet some people in the field. We know a few art directors who might love to mentor you." "That would be amazing," Olivia said, her eyes sparkling. I tried to smile, but it felt like a crack in my armor. For the first time, I could see her slipping through my fingers. After dinner, we moved to the living room. James offered me a glass of wine, which I refused, and then turned his attention to Olivia. "We want to share something with you," he said, pulling a leather-bound photo album from the coffee table. Sophia opened it and began flipping through the pages. "These are pictures of you as a baby," she said softly. Olivia leaned in, fascinated. "That's me?" "Yes," Sophia said, pointing to a photo of a tiny baby swaddled in a hospital blanket. "You were born on a snowy night in January. The hospital was so quiet, we could hear the wind howling outside." James chuckled. We used to call you our little snow angel. I stood back, my heart pounding. For years, Olivia had asked me about her birth story, and I'd always told her the truth, I didn't know. Now, here were two strangers filling in the blanks with vivid detail. Olivia turned to me, her face a mixture of wonder and confusion. Mom, did you know about this? No, I said, my voice tight. I didn't. Sophia's smile faltered, but only for a moment. We didn't mean to keep anything from you, Rebecca. We thought it might be nice for Olivia to see where she came from. The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air. Where she came from, and where she might belong. When the evening finally ended, Sophia walked us to the door. This was a good first step, she said. Perhaps Olivia could visit us again next weekend? We'd love to take her to the museum downtown. We'll think about it, I said quickly, pulling Olivia closer. As we drove home, Olivia was quiet, staring out the window. I could see her mind working, replaying the evening over and over. I wanted to ask what she was thinking, but I didn't dare. Finally, she spoke. They're nice. They are, I said carefully. It's weird, though, she continued. It's like. I don't know. They're so different from us. I exhaled, relief washing over me. That's not a bad thing. No, she said, her voice distant. I guess not. Later that night, I lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't stop replaying the look on Olivia's face as she flipped through that photo album. She hadn't let go of the memory of those pictures, clinging to the scraps of a life she didn't remember. I reached for my phone and texted Karen, my best friend. Me, you up? Karen, what's wrong? I hesitated before typing back. Me, the Rowlands met Olivia. They want more time with her. A moment later, my phone buzzed with Karen's reply. Karen, do they want her back? I didn't answer. I couldn't. But the truth was, I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep her. The following week, Sophia called to confirm the museum visit. Olivia was ecstatic, practically buzzing with excitement as we drove to their house. This time, I didn't stay. I dropped her off, swallowing the lump in my throat as Sophia took her hand and led her inside. All day, I waited by the phone, half expecting some disaster. When Olivia finally came home, she was brimming with stories about the museum, the cafe they'd gone to afterward, and the sketchbook Sophia had bought her. They said I could go to an art camp this summer, she said, holding up the brochure. It's in Vermont. Vermont? I asked, my voice catching. That's far away. It's only for a few weeks, she said, her tone defensive. I tried to smile, but my chest ached. They were offering her things I never could. Let's talk about it later, I said, brushing her hair back from her face. She sighed but nodded. Okay. As she disappeared into her room, I realized for the first time that I wasn't just afraid of losing her. I was afraid she might be better off without me. By the time Olivia agreed to another weekend visit with the Rowlands, I could feel her pulling away from me. It wasn't obvious, she still called me Mom and hugged me before school, but her excitement when she talked about them was louder than words. They have a dog, Mom, she said one morning, munching on cereal. His name is Winston. He's a golden retriever. I wish we had a dog. I poured my coffee, keeping my voice steady. You know we can't have pets in the apartment, sweetie. I know, she sighed. Then she perked up. Sophia said I could bring Winston for a walk next time I visit. The Rowlands weren't just offering her a life I couldn't provide, they were offering her the things she'd always wanted. By Friday, I was a wreck. Karen came over to keep me company after work, and we sat on the couch with glasses of wine. Okay, let's get this out, Karen said, tucking her legs beneath her. What's the worst that can happen? I stared at her, incredulous. You mean besides them stealing my daughter? Karen waved a hand. They can't steal her. She's your legal child. They gave her up, remember? But what if she doesn't want to stay? I whispered. What if she decides their world is better than ours? Karen frowned, her voice softening. You're her mom, Becca. She's not going to forget that. She's 14, I said bitterly. She's old enough to decide she'd rather live in a mansion than a two-bedroom rental. Karen didn't argue, which only made the silence heavier. On Saturday morning, I drove Olivia to the Rowlands' house again. She chattered the whole way, showing me the sketch she'd made for Sophia's birthday next month, a delicate pencil drawing of Winston with his tail wagging. You're so talented, I said, my voice cracking. Thanks, Mom. She smiled, then turned back to the sketch. When we pulled up to the Rowlands estate, Sophia was already waiting on the steps. She waved warmly, and Olivia practically bounced out of the car. I'll call you when we're on the way back, I told Sophia as she hugged Olivia. Of course, she said, her voice syrupy. Thank you, Rebecca. I drove away, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Hours passed. I cleaned the apartment, folded laundry, and tried not to check my phone every 5 minutes. When it finally buzzed, I snatched it up. Hello. Hi, Mom. Olivia's voice was cheerful, but there was something hesitant in her tone. Hey, sweetie. How's it going? Good. She hesitated. We're having dinner here tonight. Is that okay? My heart sank. She'd never stayed for dinner before. Sure, I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. What are they making? Steak, she said, then quickly added, I'll bring you leftovers if there's any. I laughed weakly. Don't worry about it, Liv. Have fun. When I hung up, I stared at the phone in my hand. Dinner. Next, it would be sleepovers. Weekends. Summers. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That night, Olivia came home with a new sweater, cashmere, obviously. She spun in a little circle, showing it off. Sophia said it matched my eyes, she said, grinning. It's beautiful, I said, even as my stomach churned. She flopped onto the couch beside me, pulling out her sketchbook. Mom, do you think I should go to that art camp in Vermont? Here it was. The conversation I'd been dreading. It sounds like an amazing opportunity, I said carefully. She chewed her lip. Sophia said they could cover the cost. I know it's expensive, so. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, asterisk, you're my daughter. Let me take care of you, asterisk, but I couldn't. That's very generous of them, I said instead. Yeah. She hesitated. But, is it okay? If I go? I swallowed hard, then nodded. Of course, Liv. It's your decision. Her face lit up, and she hugged me tightly. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. As she disappeared into her room, I sat there, staring at the empty space where she'd been. The next day, I called Elliot, my lawyer. Becca, he said, his tone cautious, what's going on? I explained everything, the visits, the gifts, the camp. He listened quietly, then sighed. They haven't filed anything legal, he said. But they're making their move. What do I do? I asked, my voice shaking. Document everything, he said. Every visit, every gift, every conversation. If it comes to court, you'll need proof that you're the one with Olivia's best interests at heart. I hung up feeling more uncertain than ever. The Rowlands were relentless. Over the next few weeks, their visits with Olivia became more frequent, and their gifts more extravagant. A new art set. Designer shoes. A weekend trip to New York to see an art exhibit. I tried to keep my composure, but it was getting harder. Every time Olivia came home, she seemed a little more distant. One night, as we were sitting at the dinner table, she hesitated before speaking. "Mom." "Yeah." "Sophia and James said I could stay with them this weekend. They're hosting a dinner party, and they want me to meet some people." I stared at her, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth. "Stay with them?" "Just for the weekend," she said quickly. "I'll be back Sunday night." It felt like a punch to the gut. But what could I say? "Okay," I said softly. "Thanks, Mom." She smiled, oblivious to the crack forming in my heart. That weekend, the apartment felt unbearably quiet. I kept checking my phone, waiting for updates, but they never came. When Olivia finally walked through the door on Sunday night, she was glowing. "They have this huge pool," she said, dropping her bag on the couch. "And guess what? James said he could get me an internship with an illustrator next summer." "That's great, sweetie," I said, my voice hollow. I waited until she was in bed before breaking down. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I wasn't actually sick, but I couldn't face the usual routine of balancing spreadsheets while my mind raced with thoughts of Olivia and the Rowlands. Instead, I dropped her off at school and drove to the library, where I opened my laptop and began searching for anything I could find on Sophia and James Rowland. They were everywhere. Articles about their philanthropy, gala appearances, and James's multimillion-dollar business ventures filled the screen. A picture of the two of them smiling at a charity event stared back at me. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect lives. But the deeper I dug, the more cracks I found. There was a lawsuit from 2 years ago. A contractor had accused James of breach of contract over unpaid invoices for work on one of his properties. The case was settled quietly, but the details hinted at something ugly. Then I stumbled across something even more chilling, an old newspaper article about a nanny who'd worked for the Rowlands. She'd quit abruptly, claiming she'd been mistreated and underpaid. The article described a toxic household where appearances were everything and kindness was conditional. I saved the article and leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. Could Olivia really thrive in an environment like that? Later that afternoon, I picked Olivia up from school. She climbed into the car, her face bright. "Guess what?" she said, barely waiting for me to answer. "Sophia said I can come to their 4th of July party next weekend. They're having fireworks and everything." "That sounds fun," I said, gripping the steering wheel tightly. She frowned, sensing my hesitation. "You're okay with it, right?" "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "We'll talk more about it later." But by the time we got home, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Olivia, we need to talk," I said, sitting her down at the kitchen table. Her brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, unsure how to phrase it without sounding like the villain. "I've been looking into the Rowlands. They're not perfect, Liv. I found some things that worry me." Her face darkened. "Why are you snooping on them?" "I'm trying to protect you," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "You're spending so much time with them, and I need to know if they're trustworthy." "They're my biological parents," she snapped. "They wouldn't hurt me." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I'm not saying they would. I've raised you your whole life. It's my job to make sure you're safe." "I'm fine," she said coldly, standing up. "You don't need to protect me from them." That night, Olivia barely spoke to me. She spent the evening in her room, sketching in her notebook and refusing to answer when I knocked on her door. I sat on the couch, staring at the article about the nanny on my phone. Was I overreacting? Was I just jealous? Karen called around 9 p.m., and I poured out everything: the articles, the lawsuit, the nanny's claims. "It's suspicious," Karen agreed, "but it's not a smoking gun. Becca, you need to talk to them. Directly." "Talk to them?" I scoffed. What am I supposed to say? Hi, I think you're manipulating my daughter, but please prove me wrong. Karen laughed softly. You're her mother. Act like it. They may have money, but you have something they don't. What's that? I asked bitterly. Her trust, Karen said. Don't let them take it from you. The opportunity to confront the Rowlands came sooner than I expected. On Friday afternoon, Sophia called me. Rebecca, she said, her voice dripping with concern. I wanted to discuss something important. Do you have time to meet? I hesitated, then agreed. If they wanted a fight, I was ready. We met at a cafe in Brookhaven, a sleek, modern place that made me feel underdressed the moment I walked in. Sophia was already seated, sipping an espresso. Thank you for coming, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What's this about? I asked, skipping the pleasantries. Sophia folded her hands on the table, her expression serious. James and I have been discussing Olivia's future. She's such a talented, bright girl, and we believe she deserves every opportunity to succeed. I stiffened. What are you saying? We'd like her to spend more time with us, she said carefully. We can offer her things you can't, better schools, connections in the art world, stability. My blood boiled. Stability? Are you implying she doesn't have that with me? Sophia sighed, as if she were the patient one in this conversation. Rebecca, we're not trying to take her from you. We just want what's best for her. She already has what's best for her, I snapped. She has a mother who loves her unconditionally. Can you say the same? Sophia's eyes flashed with anger, but she quickly composed herself. We're not enemies, Rebecca. We're on the same side. It doesn't feel like it, I said, standing up. Stay away from my daughter. When I got home, Olivia was waiting for me. Sophia called, she said, crossing her arms. She told me you were rude to her. Olivia, you need to understand. No, she shouted. I don't want to hear it. You're ruining everything. Tears filled her eyes, and she stormed off to her room, slamming the door. I stood there, shaken. For the first time, I realized I might actually lose her. By the time the 4th of July rolled around, Olivia was spending more time at the Rowlands estate than she was at home. The 4th was her first overnight visit, and while I'd reluctantly agreed, every moment leading up to it felt like a countdown to something I couldn't stop. She packed her bag with excitement, throwing in clothes and sketchbooks while humming to herself. I stood in her doorway, watching her with a knot in my chest. Got everything you need? I asked, my voice brittle. Yep, she chirped. Sophia said I could wear her scarf for the party, it's vintage. That's nice, I said, forcing a smile. She paused, sensing my tension. Mom, are you mad? No, Liv, I said quickly. I hesitated, struggling for the words. I just miss having you around, that's all. She tilted her head, her expression softening. It's only one night. I'll be back tomorrow. I nodded, but the ache in my chest didn't ease. The Rowlands house was alive with activity when we arrived. Lights strung across the lawn sparkled like stars, and caterers buzzed in and out of the house, carrying trays of food and drinks. Olivia's face lit up as Sophia emerged from the front door, her arms outstretched. There's my girl. Sophia said warmly, pulling Olivia into a hug. I stayed by the car, feeling like an outsider. Rebecca, Sophia said, turning to me. Thank you for letting Olivia come. We'll take good care of her. I'm sure you will, I said, my tone clipped. Mom, you don't have to wait, Olivia said, already inching toward the door. I forced myself to smile. Have fun, Liv. Call me if you need anything. I will, she promised, waving as she disappeared inside. As I drove away, the silence in the car was deafening. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I tried distracting myself, cleaning, reading, even calling Karen, but nothing worked. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Olivia. "Everything's fine. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at the message, my heart sinking. It was the first time she'd ever told me not to wait up. The next morning, I was waiting on the couch when Olivia finally came home. She was glowing, her arms filled with bags, clothes, art supplies, and souvenirs from the party. "Look at all this," she said, dumping everything onto the coffee table. I tried to smile. "Looks like you had a great time." "I did," she said, flopping onto the couch beside me. "James said I could use his art studio whenever I want. And guess what? They're going to help me apply to the Vermont camp." "That's generous of them," I said carefully. She hesitated, then looked at me with a mix of guilt and excitement. "Mom, can we talk about something?" "Of course," I said, bracing myself. She took a deep breath. "Sophia and James said I could live with them. Not full-time or anything. Just during the school year. They said it would be better for my art, and their school has an amazing program." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "They said that?" "It's just an idea," she said quickly. "Nothing's decided yet. But I think it could be really good for me." "Liv, you have a life here," I said, my voice trembling. "Your friends, your school, me. You'd still see me all the time," she said, her tone pleading. "I'd come home on weekends and holidays. It's not like I'd be gone forever." Tears pricked my eyes, but I fought to keep my voice steady. "Olivia, do you really want this? Or do you feel like you have to choose them over me?" Her face crumpled. "I don't know," she whispered. I feel like I belong with them. They're my family, too." I stared at her, my heart breaking. "I'm your family," I said softly. The next day, I called Elliot. "They've crossed a line," I said, pacing my living room. "I agree," he said. "They're undermining your role as her mother. If this escalates, you might have to take legal action." "What does that mean? A custody battle?" "Yes," he said gently. "But Rebecca, you need to be prepared. They have resources. If they decide to fight, it won't be easy." I hung up, feeling like the ground beneath me was crumbling. 2 weeks later, it all came to a head. Olivia had started spending weekdays at the Rowlands' house, commuting to her regular school from their estate. Every time she came home, she seemed more distant. One evening, I found her sitting on her bed, packing a suitcase. "What's this?" I asked, my voice sharp. "I'm staying with them this week," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Olivia, we need to talk about this," I said, stepping into the room. "This can't keep happening." Her face hardened. "Why not? It's not like I'm running away. They're just trying to help me." "They're trying to take you," I snapped, my voice breaking. "Don't you see that?" "They're not," she shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why can't you just be happy for me?" "Because I'm scared of losing you," I yelled, my own tears falling. We stood there, both crying, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Finally, she whispered, "You're not losing me, Mom. I need to figure out who I am." Her words shattered me. The next morning, Sophia called to discuss arrangements. "Rebecca, I know this is hard," she said, her tone syrupy. "But Olivia's happiness is what matters most. Don't you agree?" I gripped the phone, my voice trembling. "Don't pretend this is about her happiness. This is about control." There was a pause. Then, Sophia said coolly, "We'll let the courts decide." The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined. The walls were a neutral beige, lined with shelves of legal books I doubted anyone had touched in years. A single American flag stood in the corner, and the judge's bench loomed at the front, flanked by 2 dark wood tables. I sat at one of them, my palms sweating as I glanced at Olivia beside me. She looked calm, too calm. She was wearing a new dress, probably one Sophia had bought, and her hair was neatly brushed. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her eyes were trained on the Rowlands sitting across from us. Sophia looked impeccable as always, her crisp white blouse and pearl earrings giving her an air of effortless authority. James sat next to her, his jaw set, exuding quiet confidence. My lawyer, Elliot, leaned over to whisper, "Stay calm. Let them make the first mistake." I nodded, but my heart was pounding so loudly I could barely hear him. The proceedings began with formalities, introductions, procedural explanations, and a lot of legal jargon that blurred together. Then, the Rowlands' lawyer stood to present their case. "Your Honor, my clients, James and Sophia Rowland, are Olivia's biological parents. While they recognize and respect the bond she shares with her adoptive mother, Rebecca Collins, they believe it is in Olivia's best interest to spend more time with them to take advantage of the opportunities they can provide, opportunities that Miss Collins, despite her best efforts, simply cannot offer." Every word felt like a knife in my chest. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, but Elliot put a hand on my arm, grounding me. When it was his turn, he stood and spoke with calm authority. "Your Honor, Miss Collins has been Olivia's mother for over a decade. She has provided her with love, stability, and a home. The Rowlands' sudden interest in Olivia, while understandable, does not negate the bond Rebecca has built with her daughter. This is not about material wealth, it's about emotional well-being." I swallowed hard, tears pricking my eyes. The judge looked at Olivia. "You've heard both sides. This is unusual for someone your age, but I'd like to hear from you. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" Olivia hesitated, glancing at me before standing. "I love both of them," she began, her voice steady but soft. "Sophia and James are my biological parents, and I like spending time with them. But my mom, she's always been there for me. She's the one who took care of me when I was sick, who helped me with my art, who made me feel safe." Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her hands. "But I also want to know where I come from," she continued. "I want to be part of their world, too. I don't want to choose. I shouldn't have to." My heart shattered at her words, but I couldn't blame her. She was right. When the judge finally spoke, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. "This is a complicated situation," she said, her voice firm but kind. "It's clear that Olivia is deeply loved by both parties. After considering the evidence and testimony, I believe it's in Olivia's best interest to continue living primarily with her adoptive mother, Rebecca Collins, while maintaining a structured visitation schedule with the Rowlands." I exhaled, relief washing over me. The judge continued, "The Rowlands will have visitation rights on weekends and during school breaks. This arrangement will provide Olivia with the stability she needs while allowing her to explore her relationship with her biological parents." It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Outside the courtroom, Olivia hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't have to apologize," I said, holding her close. "I love you. Always." Sophia and James approached us, their expressions guarded. "Rebecca," Sophia began, "thank you for being open to this arrangement. We all want what's best for Olivia." I nodded, though her words felt hollow. As they walked away, Olivia stayed by my side, her hand in mine. That night, we sat on the couch together, eating pizza and watching a movie. For the first time in weeks, Olivia seemed like herself again, laughing at the screen and leaning her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Mom," she said softly. "I love you too, Liv," I said, my voice breaking. I knew this wasn't the end of the story. There would be more challenges, more moments where I'd feel like I was losing her. But for now, she was here. She was mine. And that was enough.